Why, hello everybody. My name is Dane-Ger, and today we are making a video in a place where there is a lot of sand. Sand galore. Because, and by the way, it's a really steep hill that I'm trying to walk up. Because today, this video is about why there is so much crazy amounts of sand in Michigan. Well, the northern Midwest anyway, around the Great Lakes. Oh, whew. A long way up here. We gotta go way over there. There's Lake Michigan way over there. That's twice I've walked that hill. So, I tried making this video last week, but it was really windy and I didn't have the poof ball thingy over the microphone. Couldn't make out half of what I said. And then I thought I would just dub over the parts you couldn't hear. And I accidentally deleted everything instead. So we're gonna come out here and I'm just gonna film it all over again. I've gotta get, oh goodness. I gotta get from here to way on the far side of that, so I'll meet you on the other side of the hill. Why is there all this sand all around the Great Lakes, particularly around Michigan? You know, but it's all over Michigan, Wisconsin, all the coastlines, and there's a lot inland too. Why is that? Well, we're not going to go back as far as the dinosaurs, but we're going to go back roughly 2.5 million years. Okay, 2.5 million. There basically was this ice age. I don't know if it's actually considered to be an ice age, but not the movie, by the way. There's no SIDS around here. There was a big glacier that formed over the majority of North America. This was called the Laurentide Ice Sheet. This Laurentide ice sheet, roughly about 30,000 years ago, had a section of it. I don't know if it broke off or what, but it was a section of that ice sheet about 30,000 years ago that was called the Wisconsin Glaciation. Glaciation? I don't know words. I'm not a scientist. I want to be. Anyway, this Wisconsin Glaciation and the Laurentide ice sheet basically made the sand. I know. It's kind of hard to think about it like that, right? So basically what happened is this glacier encapsulated so much earth, and they move kind of like living things. They're not living things, but they move kind of like big amorphous blobs on the cosmic time scale. And I gotta switch arms. My arm's getting tired. On the time scale, the glacier basically it goes through freeze-thaw weathering cycles, and during this freeze-thaw weathering, the freezing, as we know what ice does, it expands, and when it expands, it's sitting down on bedrock, and it cracks that bedrock, and then when it thaws, it turns back to water a little bit. Water gets down between those cracks, and it freezes again. And when it freezes again, it cracks those rocks even more, cracks that bedrock, and it starts lifting it into the glacier through the freeze-thaw weathering cycles. Well, that bedrock, from what I understand, I believe it's the majority of it was quartz stone. basically over a couple of million years, few tens, hundreds of thousands of years. That's a long time. Transports a lot of that bedrock, and as it's transporting that bedrock, it's also grinding that bedrock on other bedrock. It's doing what's called basal scraping and grinding. And there's a neat looking rock right here. No, that's a piece of rubber. Or foam or something. Somebody lost their boogie board chunk, I guess. That damn train left the station without me. Hang on, right, so basal scraping and grinding. Over a couple of million years, however long it took for each chunk of that quartz stone to be ground, eventually wears it down into sand, which is what is here today. Okay? Now, that's how the sand is made in a nutshell. I mean, you could talk to a geologist, and there's publicized, or rather published and peer-reviewed documents on the internet. I don't have any off the top of my head at the moment to offer you. But that's how the sand is made. Now, how is the sand here? Why is it here? Well, obviously, I mean, common sense is saying, well, that glacier was over top of Michigan, so the sand is here in Michigan. Long and short of it, yes, that's exactly what that is. But there's a lot more to it than that. So, when the sand was made, it got trapped in the glacier, and the glacier's moved, but not, like, it's only transporting, gobs of that sand. I mean, that's a technical term, by the way, gobs. It's transporting gobs of that sand. There's more of this boogie board foam. Nope, that is a rock. Nope, that's... Oh, you know what? Huh. I don't know what that is. Anyway. Those glaciers, they didn't really move around a lot. But around 10 to 12,000 years ago, the last of those glaciers completely melted away. And that meltwater in the runoff is now the Great Lakes. This particular one, this is Lake Michigan. I'm on the southeast corner, specifically Stevensville, Michigan, at the Grand Mere State Park. So all that water is in the lakes, but I also forgot to mention what the lakes actually are. So all the bedrock that the glaciers carved out came from the Great Lakes, where each of the Great Lakes, that's the lowest spots for the Midwest, and the Great Lakes region is the bottom of the Great Lakes, and that's where the bedrock that created all this sand came from when the glaciers were freezing and thawing and all this other kinds of things that it does. And so then when the glaciers melted, all that water from the glaciers went and pooled back into those basins, which are now all 5 of the Great Lakes, and along with it went the sand. So it's kind of interesting to me that when the glaciers melted around 10,000 years ago, this sand was not here yet. Not at all. Because it was still down on the bottom of the lake. So now you're probably thinking to yourself, like, well, obviously the sand is here, so it must have just washed ashore. Well, that's half of the truth, or half of the story, rather. Yes, when there's waves like this, actually, a lot of times it's when waves are a lot more violent than this, the water and the waves wash and push a lot of the sand onto the shore. And over 10,000 years, as the sand gets pushed ashore, I guess I need to look at my face and not my down here, right? As the waves bring the sand up onto the shore, it dries out. And over 10,000 years of washing and drying and washing and drying, the wind starts blowing it up into these dunes and bluffs. And it takes a long time for that to work. So basically, it may not look like it to you, but these are dunes. And if you look way up there, okay, that's a dune up there too. Now because of the area we live, or rather that I live in, and the area that I'm speaking of, this is not a desert, and so vegetation does grow out of the dune because we get enough rainfall, the climate's not too hot. It is cold in the winter, but it's not like Antarctica cold, it's just normal Midwestern cold. Alright, and so we get all these dunes that happen along the shores and stuff. Okay. Whoops, hang on, I gotta spin the screen back around so I can see my own face and you can see me too. Most of these dunes, I have, I'm just gonna guess they're from the top to the bottom. To the bottom, the top I drop from the place I've forgotten in the middle of my thoughts. Something from the safety in the pictures there. But everyone's escaped me, so why do I care? I'm surprised I remembered that much of that song. Most of that probably wasn't right. Anywho, from the top to the bottom, I'm assuming it's probably at least 100 feet worth of sand dune. I have no reason to believe that particular number. I'm just going off of the visual of this, of my own idiot guess. Make your own, I don't know. Anyway, it's probably pretty deep, just because it's been happening and blowing around for 10,000 years. So, we've talked about the glacier that existed. It pulled up a lot of the bedrock from what is now the Great Lakes, and over a million years it ground that quartz bedrock amongst other quartz bedrock, and because it did it for a million years, it had time for it to create sand. But anyway, basically that's how it is made. And I would also like to add in that, because I also happen to be very much an enthusiast of fossils and dinosaurs, that unfortunately for Midwesterners, there's not a whole lot of fossils to be found from the Mesozoic period, being the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods, because the bedrock that would have, rather the stone layers that would have housed those fossils, have been ground into literally sand over the last couple million years. And so whatever happened during that time frame, whatever kind of animals were there, whatever kind of fossils that were there, it's very doubtful that we'll ever get any of those fossils from that time period. And most of the fossils that we're going to find in the lower bedrock would be in the very bottom of the lakes, and most likely that's going to be from the middle of the Paleozoic era, which was like before dinosaurs and before most animal life. It's going to be stuff like sea life and invertebrates, things like that. And I definitely want to do some exploring on foot sometime and do lots of videos of trying to find fossils and talk about fossils and dinosaurs. In addition to, I want to also start talking about space more, which is kind of interesting. I have this thing here that looks like a meteorite. I don't think it is. Looks like a big chunk of asphalt. Anywho, back to the story of sand. So, now we've talked about the glacier made the sand from the bedrock. The waves and storms, I should mention also, severe storms can really move a lot of sand around in the water. It makes its way onto shore, dries out, then the wind. And where I live in Michigan, I live in Niles, which is close to Stevensville. That's why I'm in Stevensville. The wind most typically comes from the west and causes a lot of what we call lake effect weather. Lake effect snow, lake effect rain, lake effect storms, stuff like that. It's all stuff that builds out over the lake and then comes inland and just dumps all over us. So all that weather comes in here and dumps inland on us. And that also helps to bring up a lot of the sand. Plus, that wind that most normally comes out of the west is called the westerlies. That's just a name that I found when doing all my looking up for this whole story. Oh hey, I'm back at my little spot here. I can see the rock I was messing with. Anyway, so the westerly winds also plays a significant role, and that's why the west coast of Michigan has a lot more and bigger dunes than the majority of the rest of the shoreline around Michigan and surrounding states of the Great Lakes, including Ontario, Canada. And then sometime I'll have time enough, I'll be able to go back up north again and look at the big sand bluffs. But for now we have these, which let's be honest. Let me switch this around here. Let's be honest. Where's my finger? Yeah. That's one pretty dang big sand bluff right there by itself. I'm not at all saying that we don't have the big bluffs around here. There's a lot bigger ones up north. All right, so that's most of the story of sand, but I'm going to add in a few other things here. So the sand that was made in the glacier and has been now basically filtered through the water and dried out and pushed by the wind up into these dunes. It's not just here on the shoreline. There's lots of sand mines further inland. In the town I live in, Niles, there's 2 big sand pits where they mine sand out and they sell it for various uses. The most common use for that sand is used in road construction. It's used to be mixed in with asphalt and concrete. Well, I actually used to be a truck driver driving dump trucks. And we used to take a lot of that sand out to the boroughs around Chicago to concrete mixing facilities for all the different things that they're making out of concrete. And another use for it also is, ooh, damn, excuse me, half to freaking death. Another use for it is they use it for making industrial molds for foundry work. So like cast iron products, they use this sand for making the molds and like the mold cores. If you need an empty space in the middle, you don't want to waste too much metal by having to re-mill all that back out. It can be used for a lot of that, but those sand pits are all over the place. And most of that is, a lot of those right now are actually natural lakes, but a lot of them are being made into man-made lakes as they dig and dredge out all the sand from those sand deposits. And those deposits are there really because also part of the glacier dug out a lot of what was there previously, leaving a hole, and then when the glaciers melted, it left sand in that hole. Oh, look at this. Look at all, okay, let's come over here. Oh wow, look at this. That is by far the largest piece of driftwood I've ever seen in my entire life. Maybe I'm weird. Let's be honest with ourselves, there's no maybe. I am weird. But I actually really love seeing this kind of, I don't know if I'd call this desolated or not, but these are definitely trees that have come down off that bluff. They grew out of the bluff, and then they fell as it eroded. Yeah, so here's a good example of, I guess, proving, though I guess there's no really proof needed. All up at the top of this bluff was woods, but probably a couple decades worth of erosion has pulled that sand back down off the bluff, and all these trees fell down with it, and now they're just laying here. Look at this. This tree here is the same as it looks like to me. If I had a saw with me, I could cut that open and tell you for sure what kind of tree it is. But it's missing all its bark like that. I don't know, it's a big thick tree. You know, like these This tree here, to me, honestly, looks like maple to me. Somebody has hacked away on that. That is from somebody chopping with an axe or a hatchet. This tree's starting to go, but it's hanging right in there. Still just hanging on. Yeah, that's really cool, man. I really hate to admit, but I actually guess I don't, but I really like seeing this kind of stuff. It's not good for what it is, but it's interesting proof that all of this from way down below my feet to all the way up there is all sand. Came out of the water, dried out, the wind blew it up into this big bluff, trees started growing out of it, and there's some fat trees in here too. Like I mean, there's a good 80 years worth of growth in that big fat one at the minimum. It had that much time for it to sit there and grow, and then the erosion over the years pulled the sand back down onto the beach, and all these trees that were on top of it down with it. And check it out, we got some moss. We got some moss on the north side of those roots. We got some roots here with some moss, but that's really cool. I've actually never seen moss like on beach stuff before. Huh. If you're somebody that knows about moss, let me know if that's common for having moss on the beachfront and stuff. I've seen it all over trees on people's houses around way inland, but never on a beach. It's really interesting. So anyway, yeah, I'm happy I walked onto this one. That's really cool. So let's start walking towards the sunset, shall we? Boy, look at that. Look at the break in the clouds. I came out, I seen what I wanted to see. I mean, there's a lot more that I want to see. I want to get more into exploring. If you want to help me to do that, you can start by, there's a button. Subscribe to the channel is what I'm saying. Alright, like this video, leave me comments if there's anything I left out of why there's so much sand around the Great Lakes in Michigan. Please leave a comment and tell me what I missed. If there's something that you think you should add, do it. I want to know everybody's thoughts. I want to know all the science behind it. It actually took me a few days to put notes together enough for me to remember what I'm talking about to make the video about this sand. And though I know the explanation itself can be condensed down into about a 2-minute conversation, I really wanted to come out here and film all this. So anyways, thank you so much for watching my video. It means the world to me. And I will see you very soon in the next video. I don't know what it's about yet, but it's going to be about something.